So imagine this. You're a rising star, buzz in the industry, eyes on you. And then the invite lands. A Puff Diddy party. Congratulations, you've made it. You're in the mansion now, where the marble floors are colder than the contracts and the champagne flows faster than the truth. But this isn't just a party, it's a controlled scene. You're not a guest. Your inventory. Phones disappear at the door, the security's watching every move, but not to protect you. The guest list? Hand-picked. And the deeper the night goes, the more the rules stop applying. You might see things, you might be asked to do things, you might be recorded without ever knowing, and when the sun comes up, no one's talking. Not the dancers, not the artists, not the girls flown in on someone else's jet. Because, in Diddy's world, power isn't loud. It's quiet, and silence is the entry fee. Welcome to the Hidden Empire, where fame was the bait and control was always the game. It wasn't TMZ gossip, it was a federal operation. March 2024. Homeland Security agents raided two of Sean Diddy Combs' multi-million-dollar homes, Los Angeles and Miami. Not quiet, not polite. Full-blown raid. Helicopters circled, tactical gear, guns out. Streets blocked. Agents kicked in gates in Holmby Hills, the same neighborhood where celebrities throw black-tie charity event. Inside, officers seized hard drives, electronics, surveillance footage, phone. They were hunting for evidence of sex trafficking. The allegations weren't new, they were just finally getting loud enough to reach Washington. Confidential informants. Multiple women. Stories about girls being flown across states, freak-off parties, underage drinking, hidden cameras. Power and pleasure blurred together behind billion-dollar doors. Sources say the feds were building a case for months. The raids weren't random, they wanted proof, digital, physical, legal. At the time, Diddy's team said it was a witch hunt, but no one could ignore what just happened. America watched a music mogul's empire get breached like a cartel compound. Because if even half the allegations were true, then those mansions weren't homes, they were crime scenes. The women who came forward. They weren't anonymous trolls or tabloid rumors. They were women who knew him, dated him, worked with him, lived in his shadow. In 2023 alone, at least 5 lawsuits were filed against Diddy. The claims? Rape, physical abuse, drugging, forced sex acts, threats. One woman said she met Diddy as a student, she was drugged, raped, and filmed with no memory of what happened. He allegedly told her, "This is how the game works." Another woman described being flown around the country, given ecstasy without consent, and coerced into sex with Diddy and his associates, sometimes on camera, sometimes in front of others. One lawsuit painted the most chilling picture. She said Diddy isolated her, tracked her, threatened her, said he monitored her phone, had her followed, forced her into degrading sex acts. "I was trapped in a cycle of abuse and surveillance," the filing read. This wasn't a celebrity breakup, it was a pattern across years, across women, across lawsuits. They said Diddy wasn't just controlling, he built a private world, and in that world he was God. Cassie's lawsuit, the billionaire in the cage, she was more than a girlfriend. Cassie Ventura was signed to Diddy's label, lived in his home, ate at his table, slept in his bed. In 2023, she finally told the world what happened behind closed doors. The lawsuit was 35 pages of horror. She said Diddy beat her for years, punched her, kicked her, smashed phones, sometimes after arguments. After a while, sometimes family arguments, sometimes out of nowhere. She said he forced her to perform sex acts with male prostitutes while he watched, filmed, and sometimes joined in. He called them freak-offs. He told her it was part of the lifestyle. She said she felt sick, ashamed, broken. In one incident, she said she tried to leave. Diddy found out she was talking to another man, so he allegedly blew up the guy's car. Cassie said it was a message, no one walks away clean. She stayed quiet for over a decade. Why? Because he was rich, powerful, worshipped, and she was just another woman in the orbit of a man who played God. She settled the lawsuit in less than 24 hours. But the story didn't disappear. It opened the floodgates. The freak-offs industry insiders called them freak-offs, Diddy's private parties. Not the red carpet ones, these were invite-only. Secret location, no cameras allowed, at least not from guests. Phones were taken at the door, NDAs signed, security everywhere. The guest list? Young models, influencers, college girls, some barely legal, some not even that, according to whispers. They were flown in, dressed up, handed drinks. Some didn't even know what kind of party it was until it was too late. One insider said the vibe changed fast. Rooms turned into setups, drugs on the tables, porn on the screens. Diddy controlled the lights, the music, the people, and the cameras. Multiple sources say the parties were filmed without consent. Hidden cams in bedrooms, mirrors, smoke detectors, every angle caught, every act recorded. Some say the footage was used for blackmail. Others say it was just for his own collection. He called it fantasy. They called it a trap. Because once you walked in, there was no proof you ever said no. Violent, paranoid, untouchable. It wasn't just rumors. Court documents described Diddy as explosive, controlling, dangerous. In one lawsuit, Cassie said he once punched her in the face so hard she needed medical attention. It happened in a hotel room. She says she tried to leave. He threw a glass at her head and screamed she was his property. What happened after? He paid her. Not just to keep quiet, but to stay. $50,000 cash, jewelry, vacations, promises, threats. Nobody will believe you anyway, he allegedly told her. The documents say it wasn't a one-time thing. He had people watching her. He'd randomly show up where she was. If she talked to other men, he'd explode, smash things, break down doors. She stayed because she was afraid. Because she didn't have the power he had. Because Diddy wasn't just a man, he was an empire, and no one calls the police on an empire. Watching, controlling, recording. One of Diddy's former producers, someone who worked closely with him for years, said it straight. Diddy got off on watching. Not just porn, real people, real sex, real control. He would allegedly hire male escorts, sometimes strangers, sometimes known performers, and have them sleep with his girlfriends. Not in secret, in front of him. He watched, filmed, directed. He'd pick out the clothes, set the room, decide who touched what, when, and how. It wasn't about pleasure. It was about power. Watching someone else touch what was his. Watching the people around him obey, perform, submit. The producer said it made the girlfriends uncomfortable, but they couldn't say no. Diddy paid everyone, owned everything. If you disobeyed, you disappeared from the mansion, from the music, from the industry. It wasn't kink. It was a king testing his control. And everyone was just another pawn in the show. Money made the screams go quiet. On the outside, Diddy walked free. Lavish parties, Grammy tributes, billion-dollar deals. But behind closed doors, settlements. Lots of them. Multiple lawsuits over the years. Abuse, sexual misconduct, coercion never made it to trial because they were paid off. The numbers, buried. The victims, silenced with ironclad NDAs. Some couldn't even tell family what happened, couldn't speak a single word in public, or risk losing everything. One former associate said if he wrote you a check, he owned your memory. Several cases involved minors or barely legal girls. Some involved forced drug use, ecstasy, cocaine, to break down resistance. The lawsuits describe people waking up in places they didn't remember going, with no idea what happened the night before. But when the accusations came forward, they didn't go to court, they went to the bank. Because in Diddy's world, there's a price for silence, and he could always afford it. The hotel party that wasn't a party. One rapper known respected told this story on camera. He said Diddy invited him to a private after-party at a hotel suite. Said it would be fun, just a chill night, a few people, some drinks. He showed up late, knocked on the door. Diddy opened it wearing a silk robe, no shirt, just smiling. The rapper walked in and froze. Cameras everywhere, lights, a bed in the middle of the room, two naked men filming sex acts, sex toys on the tables, lube, whips, chains. No one said a word. They just stared at him like he was the next scene. He turned around and walked out. Later, he said, "I don't know what I walked into, but that wasn't a party. It wasn't illegal, it wasn't a crime, but it wasn't normal either. I don't know what I walked into, but that wasn't a party. It wasn't illegal, it wasn't a crime, but it wasn't normal either. It was a glimpse behind the curtain, and most people aren't supposed to see what's back there. The mysterious death of Kim Porter, November 2018. Kim Porter, model, actress, and mother of 3 of Diddy's children, was found dead in her Los Angeles home. She was just 47. The official cause, low-born pneumonia, but to the people who knew her, it didn't make sense. She was healthy, fit, active, and just days before her death, she reportedly told friends. Others said she was starting to speak out. Then she got sick fast. High fever, shortness of breath, gone within days. No foul play was ever found, but fans never forgot those words, investigate. Because when someone that close to power dies suddenly, the silence feels louder than the truth. The bodyguards who walked away. Being Diddy's security wasn't just about blocking paparazzi. It meant guarding the gates of a world most people couldn't imagine. But over the years, there's been a pattern. Guards quitting, fast, quiet, no explanations. Some spoke up later off the record or through whispers. They didn't talk about threats from outside, they talked about what was happening inside. Hunt said he was told never to interfere, no matter what he saw, no matter who was crying, no matter who was bleeding. Your job is to watch, not ask. Another guard claimed women were brought in drunk, sometimes barely conscious, and carried to private rooms. He left after just 2 weeks. There were stories of underage girls showing up at mansion gates, told they were invited, told to smile, told to keep their phones off. The guards weren't allowed to protect them, they were told to protect the image. Some of them left, some of them took hush money, but a few couldn't live with what they saw. Because guarding a man's house is one thing. Guarding his secrets was something else. The jet logs and the tapes. When the raids hit Diddy's homes, agents weren't just after phones or hard drives. They were looking for something bigger: movement, evidence, patterns. Private jet flight logs, internal surveillance footage, guest lists, hotel records. Sources say federal investigators believe those logs could tie people to locations, dates, and victims across multiple states. Girls flown in and out, events planned like operations, no randomness, just routes. They think the planes weren't just for business but for transport. That some footage from the mansions could show things no one agreed to be filmed doing. Some insiders said there were entire rooms wired with hidden cameras. Not for security but for control, and if the feds can match the jet logs with those tapes, then it stops being a rumor. It becomes a trail. A trail that might prove what victims have been saying for years, that none of this was an accident. It was planned, repeated, and protected. The price of loyalty. He built an empire off talent, but he made sure none of that talent ever outranked him. Inside Bad Boy Records, artists lived 2 lives. To the world, they were stars. To Diddy, they were property. Sources who worked at the label say Diddy controlled everything: the contracts, the publishing rights, the money flow. Even the cars they drove, leased in the label's name. The homes, rented through shell company. They looked rich, but most of them were trapped. They couldn't leave, they couldn't speak, and if they tried, they disappeared. Artists like the Lox publicly begged for their publishing back. Mace claimed Diddy offered him a buyback for $2 million, 0 cents, after years of manipulating his earnings. But it wasn't just about business. It was about obedience. Several insiders say they saw things they weren't supposed to see. Parties with girls who looked too young. Heavy drugs, people being filmed without knowing. They stayed silent because they were scared. Scared of lawsuits. Scared of being blackballed. Scared of a man who could end careers with a phone call. Some of them signed NDA. Some were given hush money. One former bodyguard said, "Once you're in, you're in. You don't talk about what happens around Puff. Not ever." Diddy lived like a king. Bentleys, jets, yachts, thrones. But his artists? They got crumbs and fear. Because in the world he built, power meant isolation. The more they needed him, the quieter they stayed. And that's how the machine ran for decades. One man, rich beyond belief, surrounded by stars who couldn't shine without his permission. The tape that was supposed to stay buried For years, people called Cassie's abuse claims exaggerated, said there was no proof, no footage, no police reports. Then, in May 2024, the video dropped. Security footage from a luxury hotel in Los Angeles. A long, sterile hallway. Cassie walks out of a room. Diddy follows bare-chested, enraged. He grabs her by the back of the neck, whuths her to the ground, kicks her hard, then tries to drag her back inside. She breaks free and runs. He chases her, picks up a glass vase, and slams it into the wall. It's all there, in black and white, no edits, no cuts. That hotel never called the cops, never reported it. They sat on that footage for over 6 years. Cassie never pressed charges. People asked why. This is why. Because even with evidence, no one acted. Because when a billionaire explodes behind closed doors, silence isn't a glitch. It's the system working. The footage only came out after her lawsuit, after the money changed hands, after the world moved on. But that tape, it was real, and it showed everything. The gatekeeper. To the public, Diddy was the life of the party, but inside the industry, he was something else entirely. A gatekeeper, a collector, a man who knew too much. Rappers, singers, executives, they all came through him. You wanted a feature, a deal, an award, you played by his rules. And if you didn't, you got frozen out. People in the business whisper that Diddy kept more than contacts, he kept secrets. Footage, photos, stories. Things taken at parties when people were too drunk, too high, or too desperate to care. Rooms with hidden cameras, conversations recorded, behaviors no one wanted public. Tipped stop, glaze over, forever. And he never used it, not unless he had to. Because power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just watches and waits. One former associate said, "There are people at the top who owe him silence because he knows things that could destroy them." That's why even now, with lawsuits piling up, so few speak against him, because it's not just about Diddy. It's about everyone who went to his parties, everyone who looked the other way, everyone who left with a secret in their pocket and a knot in their stomach. And as long as those secrets stay buried, so does the truth. Luxury draped in blood money. While lawsuits piled up behind the scenes, Diddy lived like royalty. A $40 million mansion in Holmby Hills, a Miami estate with its own harbor, jets, yachts, private chefs, diamond-crusted watches. He once posted a video bathing in milk and champagne. Bragged about his gold-plated bottles of Ciroc, said he spent $1 million on a party just because he could. Meanwhile, the artists who built his empire, broke, bitter, forgotten. Victims, paid off, silenced, erased, told to disappear so the empire could shine. He sold the image of success, but the real currency was fear. For every Maybach he drove, there was a story he buried. For every diamond chain, a contract someone didn't understand. For every mansion door, a room no one was supposed to open. Diddy wasn't just rich, he was untouchable. And that's exactly how he liked it. If this video opened your eyes, don't let it get buried. Share it, comment what the mainstream won't say, and subscribe because we're not done pulling bodies from behind the velvet rope. The truth is ugly, but someone has to look it in the face. You're here, stay loud, stay watching.